So there is a ridiculous amount of blame placed on the partners of pathological personalities like narcissists and psychopaths. The reality is that experts can't even spot them most of the time. There's something about our society that tends to find this need to place fault and lay blame, while at the same time protecting abusers. If people can focus on blaming the victim, they can both make themselves feel better because they can tell themselves that they would never be in that situation, and also avoid having an actual look at the way that our society protects abusers. Here's the reality. If you could have just left, you would have. We have the potential to bond more intensely to a toxic, abusive partner than to a healthy one. And when we're looking at a situation where someone is being coercively controlled, severely psychologically and emotionally abused, gaslit to within an inch of their sanity, isolated, literally brainwashed, the two of you are not on equal footing. The pathological partner and their victim are not on equal footing. Confusion doesn't bring clarity. The trauma bond is also often referred to as the Herculean bond because it is so difficult to break. People love to talk about what someone should have done, like just leaving. But the reality is the term trauma bonding was only coined in, I think, 2013. This is an incredibly new area of study. That's trauma bonding and relationships with pathological personalities like narcissists and psychopaths. We've always known that victims typically repeatedly go back, but we haven't known why. And here's the other thing, when people are blaming victims for having gotten in these relationships for picking an abuser, which anyone who's ever been with a narcissist or a psychopath knows that you get picked, and that person shows up with this mask of being this amazing, wonderful, loving, caring person that's like your soulmate and not like the abusive monster that they are. They're actually speaking from ego and their own need to self-protect and their ignorance. And the ignorance that unfortunately still exists in society. Victims of this kind of abuse deserve compassion, grace, understanding, and to be actually helped, not to be judged or blamed by people who think that we should have known, while at the same time expecting us, particularly women, to endlessly give the benefit of the doubt and put others first. Like, which is it? I say all of that to say this. It's not your fault. You didn't ask for this, cause this, attract this person because there's something wrong with you. You deserve self-compassion and understand that we heal from a place of empowerment, not from leaving our abuser and becoming our own abuser. It's not your fault, and of course you stayed. How could you have done anything else? None of this stuff is taught in schools. And like I said before, even experts can't spot these personalities. Most people's experience with a narcissist or a psychopath is the first time they even find out that these kind of people exist. And the really unfortunate thing about the victim-blaming rhetoric that exists in society today is that these kinds of pathological abusers convince their victims that there is something desperately wrong with them, and that the abuse is their fault, that everything that goes wrong is their fault. And victims deeply internalize this narrative. And then once they get out of the relationship, or even while they're still in it, society compounds that feeling by jumping on board with this completely ignorant, misinformed, victim-blaming bullshit, which, by the way, is often framed unhelpfully in this toxic positivity light of being empowering. Right? There's this toxic positivity narrative that you need to take accountability for everything that goes on in your life, and that's empowering. But here's the thing that victims of narcissistic abuse need to understand. Accountability is not a tool to berate yourself and further abuse yourself with, which is what victims of narcissistic abuse do with that accountability that they're told that they have to take. It's not your fault. You didn't make this person abuse you. You didn't even allow them to abuse you. Abuse is not a collaboration. It's not something that you sit down and hash out together and say okay to. And abusers don't show you who they really are until they already have their hooks in you. And it's actually more freeing to understand that this person was going to behave this way because of their pathology, no matter what, and that none of this stuff actually is your fault. And it doesn't always take two to tango. And if you're struggling with someone in your life who is putting all of this stuff on you, this toxic positivity, this victim blaming rhetoric and ignorance, send them this video and I'll speak to that person now. You're embarrassing yourself with your ignorance. Open a book, do some research, find another way to feel good about yourself that doesn't involve blaming victims, putting other people down, and convincing yourself of this complete delusion that something like this would never happen to you. Or deluding yourself that you would be able to spot a psychopath where world experts are not able to. Or that if you were being severely psychologically and emotionally abused, isolated and coercively controlled, that you would somehow have the clarity of mind to know what was happening and create a great exit strategy and just leave.